Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. I think on the next slide, we're just running a question and answer poll over on the Slido app. This is just so we can collect all of the questions and make sure we've answered them all fully. Over on the next slide. So just a quick overview and a reminder of what we're doing. So we have been funded by MHCLG to work with partners and other authorities to develop an alternative back office offering to planning officers and councils to process planning applications. So one that's efficient and effective, but most importantly, pleasant for people to use. The next slide will hopefully just show our roadmap. So whilst we are developing a system for back office applicable processing applications, as a whole, we are focusing this phase on fast track, inverted commas, applications, and we're starting with certificates for permitted development. That's obviously because they are the more simple, but it allows us to make sure we've got the underlying infrastructure in place before we start layering up the additional elements such as site visits and conditions, etc., required for full householder applications. On the next slide. So these show and tells, they just cover the last 2-week sprint of work rather than the whole project. So in the last fortnight, we have further iterated on versions of our prototype. We've obviously been continuing testing and research. So we've tested with 6 planning managers and 4 from 4 different councils. And we started building out the officer and manager journeys, just in a skeleton at the moment. That will obviously be developed and built up over time. On the next slide. So it's a bit more, it's not quite as simple as this, but there are 2 sides, as it were, to this phase of work. There's a design side, so service design, content design, UX, and things like that, and the developer or development side of things. So Claudia is going to talk you and tell you about the design side.
Great, thanks, Jack. So today I'm going to be presenting for Dawn and I. Dawn's the user researcher. And so what we've been working on together is looking at developing the GovUK prototype. So we've continued working on that. Some of the highlights from this sprint were the planning officers and managers can review an automated decision notice. And we also tested a planning manager amendment journey. In the sprint, we tested this version 4 of the prototype with planning officers and managers at Southwark, Lambeth, Wickham, and Central Bedfordshire. And for next sprint, we also have some already planned with Southwark, Lambeth, and Wickham. Next slide, please. So some of the prototype changes that we've been doing, as I mentioned, so on version 3, this is version 3, and officers first answered policy questions, and then they come to the screen on the right where they can recommend if the certificate of lawfulness should be granted or refused. When we did this test, it seemed redundant to users because based on the answers in the previous page, the recommendation, it seemed like, well, why am I answering this now? Like it's kind of a step behind. And within the screen, there were a lot of steps and a lot of clicks to take. And some participants also felt like even though they knew that their task was done after submitting the recommendation, they felt a lack of closure. And this was because they weren't sure what their manager would be receiving or reviewing. So based on these insights, the process now includes, so if you go to the next slide, please. Instead of confirming or instead of recommending, they're confirming a decision notice. And so this helps with the lack of closure because they know exactly what their manager is receiving, and all of their responses from the previous page is being automatically pulled into a decision notice. When we tested this, next slide, please. So when we tested this, it went over quite well, but we also found out that for a manager's perspective, they don't just want to know what's on the decision notice. They also want to know what led to this decision and what choices were made. So it's important to show both what they chose for each policy and the decision notice. We also found out that we're missing some content on the decision notices, and we've been updating that. And but overall, the automatic generation of a decision notice was seen as really positive in a way to streamline the process. Next slide, please. So for this, we were looking at how a manager could request amendments to what a planning officer has done. So they would see the decision notice, and if they didn't agree with it, they could press no, and then they could comment specifically on which questions the officer had responded to, so that the comments could be very targeted. Next slide, please. We've only tested this with 2 people so far, and it went well overall as a first step in the right direction. And managers welcome the functionality for the specific amendments, but they also talked about needing to ask for amendments on documents. So that's something that we need to think about. And officers and managers both wanted a way of managing the changes in the home screen. So for example, in the quote, I would have liked to know when I submitted it, and I believe my manager would have liked to know when it was submitted to them. So maybe there could be an extra column. So we're going to have to think about that and prototype some things for it. But overall, we'll have to be looking at as well for the next steps, how can this journey of amending be working for full householder and permitted development? And so before going forward with this in permitted development, I'm going to kind of map them to both processes and see how it could work. So next slide. Now Neil will be talking about the developer's work.
Oh. Just a moment. Just need to change my browser tab, and I'll give you a demo of the live service. So if you're in the last show and tell, you'll have seen us demo the ability for a officer and a manager to log into the system, view an index of current applications, and also view an individual application with its supporting contextual information. In this show and tell, I'm going to show you how we've iterated on that and how we've created what we're calling a skeleton workflow. So the first step is to log in as the officer. And as you may have remembered from last time, this is the index page, and each tab represents a set of applications that are in different statuses, and they, from left to right, represent kind of progressive stages that an application would go through. This in assessment tab is a sort of to-do list of sorts for me as an officer. So for this particular example, I'm going to use this application for St James Road. So as per last time, there's additional information about the application. This is almost a form of a dashboard that the officer can refer to and expand each tab as they work through the application. And part of the key workflow is, of course, the assessment itself. So I'm going to go through a couple of steps. Firstly, to evaluate the requirements. At the moment, this is obviously much simpler, and much simpler than the real journey. But for now, we have a simple yes or no input for this, whether the application meets policy requirements. I get an indicator that I've completed that step, but if I want to, I can still go back and edit it. And it's not until I take this confirm step that those edits become locked, in a sense. So what this submission will do is essentially, in a way, pass the work on to my manager, who will make a determination of my decision. So before I log out and then log in again to simulate the manager, I'll just show you how that property for St James Road has progressed from being in the in assessment tab to, as you might expect, the awaiting manager's determination tab. So I'm going to log in again, just show you the manager's view. The manager's got a sort of a trimmed down view actually on the index. They don't have the first step which the officer had access to. And they have the ability to review what was done. And again, here it's just a simple input for the moment, and I can agree or disagree with what the officer said. And the effects that has on the homepage is, as you might expect, to progress that particular application to the determined state. So I'm going to present again and just get back to where I was in the slide deck. So the step that I demoed there as I logged in as the officer, obviously having just a yes/no response to the policy requirements is not enough. We need much more detail than that for various reasons, including creating the report. As we mentioned in previous show and tells, we've been working closely with Open Systems Lab, who've developed the Plan X service. We've got weekly catch-ups with them, and one of the reasons for that is that their data and their work is extremely valuable. They allow people to edit a kind of a workflow which will incorporate national and local policy for planning applications, so that an end user, an applicant or an agent can sort of step through almost a logic tree for an application for a particular area and get some output, including whether or not that application is valid or not. So we are really interested in taking data that they have, and if you look at the top right here, it's a little kind of overview of the kind of questions that might be asked an applicant. Are there any protected trees on the property? No, for instance. Representing that the applicant wanted to make alterations to the property. And we can also extract context around these particular questions. So for this last one here, as you can read, the reason for asking that within Plan X is that this point around requiring planning permission for a particular type of alteration. So I think a key part of our upcoming sprint is going to be working with mapping these questions into what we want to show and how we want to use that data to guide the officer's journey, specifically for that permitted development requirement step.
Thanks, Neil. Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, our work is divided up into 2-week sprints, and so that was just covering what we've done. So next sprint, we will continue designing the prototypes based on, as Neil said, that work with RIPA and that project that Lambeth are leading on. We will also be distributing a survey amongst all stakeholders and interested party. That should be coming out this week, next week, sometime. So please have a look out for that. We're obviously now going to start scaling to full householder applications, and that's all about adding the assessment functionality to this service, and yeah, to continue mapping, integrating with RIPA. Next slide, please. Yeah, some supporting links here, but also it should have been on the invitation, the link to the to our website, which has got all the detail on. So please take a look. And last slide, I think. Yeah, questions and feedback. I think Tom has been monitoring the Slido app.
Yep, so we've got 5 questions in here. I'll just go through them as they're listed. So there's one here from Ewan Mills, who's asking if we've developed a schema for the decision notice.
I'm not sure what it means by schema in a way. Like, we've prototyped our way of automating the decision notice, and then that's what we'll be working on in the next sprint development-wise. Neil, do you want to add anything to that question?
Well, yeah, we haven't created a schema for the decision notice. I think something that's certainly been on my mind is how to make that notice configurable as much as possible for each council, at least, and probably some more variations that I haven't thought of yet as well. So when we do create that schema, we'll need to make sure we keep it very flexible.
Yeah, I think the other aspects as well would be ensuring that, like, when we're kind of generating decision notices and stuff, they're being made available to planning registers and the like, which is something that's on our kind of to-do list. I'm not sure whether we'll be able to cover that in this project or not. It's something to be confirmed, I think. Then there are a couple here from Kathy at Coventry City Council. So the first one was just asking for clarification on what we mean by fast track.
Yeah, if I jump, what we discovered in previous phases was that fast track is a generally used term. However, it covers slightly different things in different places. But yeah, so I should have clarified this at the beginning. What we're meaning by fast track is PD, so permitted development, and small scale householder applications. So larger rear extensions, dormer extensions, that sort of thing.
Okay. And then,
can I just add one thing to that? The survey that we're sending around is trying to also understand how each council differs. So, and we're trying to figure out which councils do fast track. So we're trying to also think about everyone's needs as well. Thank you.
then Kathy's second question was, is it intended for Plan X to be linked to the front end of the certificate fast track process?
Yes and no. So we are obviously being funded by central government. It's publicly funded. We are not. We're obviously developing the back end system, and we're certainly not developing anything that's dependent on any system that you have to pay for and buy. However, working with the Reducing Invalid Planning Applications project, these are both open source projects which allow a variety of front end systems. One of which is Plan X. I don't know if anyone else wants to articulate that slightly better than me.
No, I think you articulated it really well, Jack. I think it's just, I guess the main link we have is with RIPA, as Jack said, and I think maybe potential confusion is because that's being developed by Open Systems Lab, who have built PlanX, but their project is also publicly funded and will not only work with PlanX. But it makes sense for us, I guess, rather than using government money to build the same thing, to kind of take what RIPA has built, and we're working really closely with them so we can focus on kind of developing functionality that is separate to their product. But there won't be any dependency on having to use and pay for PlanX. There will, obviously, if a council wants to do that, they can, and it will still work with that as well.
Okay. Another one here from Kevin Buckthorpe at Buckinghamshire Council, and he's asking what are our future plans, ideas and thoughts for integrating with the department's data, so enforcement case details, building control, land charges, etc.
Yeah, I mean, as detailed in our roadmap of the first couple of slides, we are initially just focusing on the, again, inverted commas, fast track element of planning applications. However, we fully appreciate that the planning service is not just planning application, it's not just fast track planning applications. There are a whole suite of other services, including enforcement and building control. Because I don't think anyone applies for planning permission just for the sake of applying for planning permission. They want to change something or build something, which generally requires more than just a planning application. So in developing it in the way that we have, which is again open and API led, enables and will enable other services to be integrated at the appropriate time when we get to that stage. I mean, we would not do justice to our time, budget and stakeholders by trying to tackle everything all at the beginning, but hopefully we're doing it in a logical way.
Okay. Then question from Sonny Sardivan. He's asking, will each council's individual logos appear on the final decision notices? So our plan there is to integrate with GovUK Notify. So on the Notify template, you kind of set up things like the headers and individual like logos and the like within that. So yes, would be the short answer. It'd be something to be configured during implementation.
There will also be a kind of, I guess, admin user and area within BoPS where you can kind of have the global settings so that, for example, on decision notices, it could say the contact details of the council or be signed off by a particular member of the council, which will be inside BoPS as well as Notify.
Okay. Then follow-up question from Kathy. It's asking why we're doing the PlanX work again when we've already got the PD work finished with them. I think we need to kind of clarify what we're doing around that.
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, but we're not recreating the PlanX work. So PlanX is a way for an applicant to check whether they need to, what kind of permission they need to apply for, what kind of planning permission, if it's a full permission or if it's for a certificate of lawfulness, and it kind of guides them through that. That will then be connected to RIPA, which is that other product we talked about, which is also being developed by the same folks at PlanX, which kind of helps to validate those applications. So to check, okay, based on what the applicant has answered, does it actually, is this an actual valid application? Can they apply for this type of planning permission? And then it will come into our system where it will surface what those questions are that the applicant answered, but it will also make it a lot easier than current systems for planning officers and planning managers to kind of check those answers against all of the documentation and plans that the applicant has submitted. So ours is kind of the other side of that. So we're actively trying not to recreate stuff, which is why we're working really closely with RIPA, so we can take those questions and pull them directly into our system. But ours is very much about then making it as easy as possible for kind of planning officers and managers to check everything they need to do, just to make sure that what the applicant has said actually matches the, I guess, the documents and plans. So I don't know if that helps. Hopefully that helps to clear it up a little bit.
Okay. Then a couple of questions. I'm not sure who they're from, but one is asking how we're planning on publishing planning applications and decision notices.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Obviously, every planning or local authority has a duty to publish these, and there is a separate project with MHCLG at the minute, looking at a national register of planning applications. So we have that in mind, and we'll be having conversations with them about that. There is also within London, there's the London Development Database, and then, as I say, local authorities have a planning register. So these are all things we are aware of. However, as I say, we've not tackled those, and we've not started looking in too much detail at those at the moment, because we're obviously we're focusing on developing the assessment element first. However, the intention is that because we're moving away from it being a paper-based service and PDFs and documents, the package of data that underlies all of this will be easily transferable and exposed to any range or combination of planning registers. So we are fully aware of the fact we need to publish these, and when we get to that stage, we will hopefully have to update everyone on progress.
Okay, and then the other anonymous question is, I presume it has a JSON/XML definition that's designed to be open and extensible. This is in relation to the decision notice schema. So I think yes, it will do, would be the answer when we get around to actually kind of defining it. And one from Chris Dowell at Coventry, who's asking, how are customer/consultee details managed? Are they unique to the application or centrally held?
I think the way I see that working at the moment is that we would be working with the data that we extract from the Planex front end. And obviously we'll need to be very cautious around data privacy for those details. But they're not centrally held as I understand it.
Okay. Another one from Chris is, how will we manage the dashboards when you have a full officer workload? So there could be 50 to 60 live applications in the list. Are there going to be search functions, etc.?
Yeah, there's probably quite a few different approaches we can take to that. I know we've been looking at a, maybe Claudia might be able to add as well, but in some sense, making a guess within the system of the priority of the applications, depending on when they actually arrived in the system, maybe combined with what type of application it is. So we can do maybe a bit of helping of their workload in that way. And yeah, absolutely, it's a good point as well. Having a search function would help that as well.
I just coming. I think it's probably a good point to make that all of this work is being done in collaboration with partners and other stakeholders, and at every stage of design and development, we are testing with users. So not just within Southwark, but within all the partners. And as we saw earlier on, I think this sprint we've tested with eight managers from 4 different authorities. But I think the week before it was 8 planning officers at 6 local authorities. So what I'm trying to make is that every stage we are testing with users and making sure that what we're doing is correct and benefits users and makes it more and is relevant to specific authorities rather than just one fixed system that rules everyone, as it were.
Okay. Kathy's asking if we can have a chat to clarify some stuff around Plan X. So the answer is yes. Michelle's going to get in touch with you to have a chat. That's sorted. And then there's a question from Peter Kemp, whether it be possible to put the data into an Oracle database so the data can be accessed through multiple systems at once. I mean, that I think is out of scope of what we're looking to do with this project. I guess theoretically it would be possible. I'm not sure like where like that would appear on our roadmap. It's not something we've like been asked before. So yeah, I can't really give a clear answer on that, I'm afraid. I'm not sure if anybody else any comments on it. Okay, and I think that is all of the questions we've got through on Slido. Yes, it is.
Okay, well, thanks everyone. Thanks to the team for putting this together, and thanks for everyone for joining us and watching us. Yeah, well, we'll keep all of these questions and we'll make sure that all of them have been answered fully in case there's anything else we need to cover. So I think that's thanks and goodbye. See you in 2 weeks.